Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. So today's update is a little bit embarrassing. The chain of events, the saga of events, started a couple of days ago. Kathleen Kennedy was here in London, presenting a special rare screening of the original version of 1977's Star Wars A New Hope. Or should I just simply say Star Wars, for all of you OGs out there. Many of you guys probably saw it back in the day, but since the special editions in 1997, and then subsequent changes in 2004 and 2011, the lack of availability of the original theatrical cut has given it almost a mythological status in the fandom. And by the way, George Lucas hated it, because in his eyes, it wasn't his full vision. Because he didn't have the technology back in the 70s to do some of the CG work he was able to do in the 90s, he considered the original cut to be incomplete. He said to fans, if you're seeking out this version, you're only watching half the movie. And so in light of the recent screening in London, this was a legit fan concern. Isn't it betraying George Lucas to have Kathleen Kennedy approve of this? I mean, sure, he's not part of Lucasfilm anymore and he sold the company to Disney, but if they claim to respect his legacy, then maybe they wouldn't have done this. Kathy was there to ease concerns, so she came onto the stage and she said, on behalf of Lucasfilm, as the president, this screening is legitimate. It's fully Lucasfilm endorsed. Maybe not George Lucas endorsed, because despite how fans reacted to some of the changes, he only wanted you to see the special editions. The fans got the original version. And Kathleen Kennedy went on to talk about the 50th anniversary of the movie coming up in 2027. It coincides with Star Wars Celebration in Los Angeles, and she basically implied they're going to do something special for it. Her comments have been taken out of context though. Some outlets have been sensationalizing what she said, but she did clarify they're in the stages of planning what they're going to do. It's unbelievable it's been 50 years, and maybe when the milestone comes, in May 2027, they'll put the original cut on Disney+, or maybe release it as physical media, maybe as a steelbook. However, my friends, the reception to the screening didn't go as planned. So just imagine the scenario. You've bought tickets or been invited to this special screening. Maybe you saw the original cuts back in the day. Maybe you have vivid memories of the first time you were ever introduced to this amazing franchise when it was just one film. You're so excited because you've not seen this version in years, decades. Or maybe you're my age. You've seen the originals, but George Lucas's edited versions. You're really well acquainted with the special editions, but you're excited to finally see what all the hoopla is about in regards to the original cut. So imagine the anticipation. You're probably expecting this to be amazing. You know, none of the Greedo shot first nonsense, none of the Jabba CG that looks very much like a 90s disaster, and none of the CG Mos Eisley. You're so excited, and then it dawns on you how unpolished the theatrical cuts really was. Not everyone feels this way. I'm not saying I feel this way, but that was the reaction of many journalists and fans alike in attendance. This comes from The Hollywood Reporter. Star Wars looks terrible in screening of long-lost original 1977 version. And I just want to say, after Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope is my second favourite Star Wars movie, so I will defend the original installment all day long, but apparently this looked pretty bad. And it could just be because of preservation techniques. It might not be a problem with the film itself. But the article goes on to say this. Speaking to a crowd at the British Film Institute, Kathleen Kennedy said, "What you're about to see is the first print, and I'm not even sure there's another quite like it. It's that rare." And the result? Well, my friends, many were underwhelmed. Looking at some of the comments, one film critic from The Telegraph said this: "The unaltered original looks terrible by modern standards. I felt like I was watching a completely different film." Another said, "It was a joyously craggy, grubby, stoddily carpeted spectacle that looks more like fancy dress than grand sci-fi epic." Other criticisms commented on the pacing and how dialogue, especially between R2-D2 and 3PO, was much clunkier. The entire movie looked like it was filmed on a set, instead of immersing you the way later versions did. Another comment says, "The Death Star panels were less like supercomputers and more like wooden boards with lights on them. It felt less like watching a blockbuster and more like a game of dressing up in the desert." Some very brutal criticisms. On the other hand, there were many who enjoyed it. A vlogger for cinema-savvy George Aldridge added that the screening was incredibly special, but at the same time, it made him appreciate George's changes. And so the irony is that after decades of mocking George Lucas's special editions, fans are finally appreciating them when presented with the theatre cut in 2025. Fans are finally seeing the reasons many things were changed, many things were cut, and in the case of CG aliens, why they were added. And something hilarious which reviewers noted is that the cinema burst into applause when Han Solo shot first. I have to admit, of all of George's changes, that was the worst. Han was more of a badass when he shot first. But the question remains, how does George feel about it? Not just this screening, but what it means in terms of Lucasfilm being willing for fans to see it. Could they release it globally for the 50th anniversary? But this was something George was firmly against. He doesn't run the show anymore and Disney can do whatever they want. But if they're going to go about this, I hope they spoke to him first. He did present the 45th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back, so he is still in the know, and in the vicinity of Lucasfilm. He's still friends with people like Dave Filoni. Maybe he'll appear at Celebration in 2027. But I think the most citable example of him being against airing the original cut came in 2004. When he was asked why he doesn't release the original cut alongside the special editions, he grumpily replied to the Associated Press, "The special edition is the only version I want out there. The other movie is on VHS. If anybody wants it, it's there. I'm not going to spend the time and the money to re-release it." He said, "We're talking millions of dollars here. The money and the time to refurbish all of that, it doesn't make any sense. That version is redundant. It doesn't exist anymore. This version," and he's talking about the special edition, "is the way I wanted the movie to be seen. And I'm sorry you saw a half-completed film and fell in love with it. I'm the one who has to take responsibility for it. I'm the one who has to have everybody throw rocks at me all the time. So at least if they're going to throw rocks, they're going to throw rocks at me for something I love, rather than something I think is not very good. Or at least something I think isn't finished." And this is something I love about George Lucas, because every time I've criticized a Disney Star Wars project, you'll always have some fans who are taught, well, George Lucas wasn't perfect. Look at the dialogue in The Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones. Look at all of these horrible decisions he made with the special editions and this and that. Fine. But it was his vision, his creative baby. Say what you will about George Lucas, he's one of the greatest innovators of cinema, who puts his story first, regardless of external pressure, fan wishes, studio interference. Even if we don't always like it, he put his story first. Star Wars belonged to him. It was his way or no way. It was his universe and his rules. Even if you disagree with some of his choices, he understands Star Wars better than anyone else. And he's a revolutionary of world building, character archetypes, creativity in the space opera and sci-fi niches. So if he says the special editions are the way he wants them, fair enough. We might disagree, but he's the maker. He has the final say. And in the end, I think even in his most controversial decisions, you can see what he's going for. Even if it's clunky, his storytelling skills are undeniable. Unlike a lot of modern Hollywood, he was driven by his relentless pursuit to make good art. With Star Wars, he didn't really care what fans thought. He was building a mythology, pushing the boundaries of film technology. His commitment to evolving his narrative and experimenting with new tools is something that deserves deep respect. And I don't even agree with everything George did. But those are all of the reveals, my dear friends. Share your thoughts in the comments down below.